Chapter 1, The Foundation of Trust. Clifton May had always believed in absolute. In the unforgiving mountains of Afghanistan, there was life or death, loyalty or betrayal, mission success or catastrophic failure. No grey area existed in his world of precision shot and calculated risk. A Marine Corps sniper with 4 tours under his belt, Clifton had earned his reputation through unwavering focus and an almost supernatural ability to remain calm under pressure. Back home in rural Montana, he built what he thought was an unshakable foundation with Sandy Carson, now Sandy Mass. They met at a veteran support group 7 years ago where she worked as a counselor. Sandy had seemed perfect, understanding of his PTSD, supportive of his military care, and genuinely caring about veteran struggle. She had flowing auburn hair, keen green eyes, and a smile that could disarm even the most hardened soldier. Their courtship was swift but rogue. Clifton, methodical in everything, had researched her background, her family, and observed her interaction with others. Sandy came from a middle-class family in Billings. Her father was a retired police officer, her mother a school nurse. She studied psychology and seemed genuinely passionate about helping veterans transition back to civilian life. When Timothy was born 5 years ago, Clifton felt his world was complete. The boy had his father's steel grey eyes and his mother's gentle demeanor. Clifton would spend hours teaching Timothy about responsibility, honor, and the importance of keeping one's word. Even deployé, he called every day, reading bedtime stories over video chat and helping with homework. Clifton's military career was stellar. HIS commanding officer respected his judgment. HIS fellow Marine trusted him with their lives, and his sniper record was among the best in his uni. Jessiery, his spotty and closest friend, often joked that Clifton could trade a needle at Hudson's Yard in a windstorm. But what made Clifton truly exceptional wasn't just his marksmanship. It was his ability to read people, to predict their behavior, to see remove ahead. He'd grown up in a broken home where his alcoholic father had abandoned the family when Clifton was 12. HIS mother, Eva May, had raised him and his younger sister alone, working 2 jobs and instilling in them the value of self-reliance and fierce loyalty. Trust is earned slowly and lost instantly, she used to say. And some betrayal can never be forgiven. Those words had shaped Clifton's worldview. In the Marine, he'd seen soldiers court-martialed for minor infraction, while others received medals for acts that bordered on war crime. He learned that justice wasn't always served by the system. Sometimes you had to take matters into your own. Sandy seemed different from the weak people who had disappointed him through his life. She understood his need for control, his preference for routine, his way of compartmentalizing emotion. When he deployed for his current tour, she had promised to keep their family strong, to be his anchor in the chaos of war. From his position in the Afghan mountains, Clifton managed every aspect of his family's life through technology. He paid bill online, monitored Timothy's grad through the school portal and even kept tabs on their neighborhood through security camera and installed before leaving. Sandy had logged about his thoroughness, calling him her control freak. But she seemed to appreciate his dedication to their family security. The night before he received the call that would shatter his world, Clifton had been planning Timothy's 6th birthday party. He'd already ordered gift online to be delivered while he was away, coordinated with Sandy about inviting Timothy's classmate, and even arranged for a surprise video call with some of his Marine buddies who'd meet Timothy during preview live period. Clifton prided himself on being a provider and protector. HIS monthly deployment funded a comfortable life for his family, a nice house in a safe neighborhood, Timothy's private school tuition, and Sandy's part-time work schedule that allowed her to be home when Timothy returned from school. He'd structured everything perfectly, believing that his careful planning and unwavering loyalty would be reciprocated. The irony wasn't lost on him that a man trained to spot enemy at extreme distance had failed to see the betrayal growing in his own home. Chapter 2. The call that changed everything. October 15 th, 2024. The date would be burned into Clifton's memory forever. He and Jessiery were positioned on a rocky outcrop overlooking a suspected Taliban supply route. It was 0300 hours local time. The desert silence broken only by the occasional whisper of wind through the rock. Clifton's rifle was perfectly zeroed, his breathing controlled, his mind focused on the mission ahead. The satellite phone's vibration against his chest seemed impossibly loud in the stillness. Clifton frowned. Calls at this hour usually meant emergency family notification or mission update. He checked the Kaleide home. HIS at rat speaked slightly. Sandy knew never to call during operational hours unless it was life-threatening. With practiced efficiency, he signaled Jesse to maintain watch and answer the call. Sandy, what is wrong? Is Timothy? But the voice that interrupted him wasn't his wife's. It was deep, unfamiliar, laced with mockery that made Clifton's blood run cold. Hey, soldier. This is your wife's boyfriend. The word hit Clifton like a sniper's bullet to the chest. Time seemed too slow as his mind processed the impossible statement. In the background, he could hear Sandy's unmistakable laughter. Not the gentle log he'd fallen in love with, but something cruel and gleeful. He just tattooed property of a cower on your son's face. Clifton's world exploded into white hot rage, but his training kicked in. HIS expression remained neutral. HIS breathing stayed controlled even every muscle in his body tensed for violence. Jesse noticed the change immediately rotating to observe his partner while maintaining security. The stranger's voice continued, each word carefully chosen to inflict maximum psychological damage. Your boy cried like a little just like his daddy probably does when the bombs go off. More laughter from Sandy. Clifton could hear her voice in the background. Tell him about the adoption papers. Brandon. Brandon. Now Clifton had a name. That's right, hero. I'm giving your bastard son up for adoption. Found some nice folk who actually want a damaged kid. Sandy and he are starting fresh without your genetic mistake. The line went quiet except for the shuffling sounds of the phone being passed around. Then Sandy's voice came through clearly, filled with the name Clifton had never heard before. Did you really think he'd wait around for a broken soldier? Brandon. Give me what you never could. Excitement, passion, a real life. You were always so controlling, so paranoid. Well, congratulations. Your paranoia was finally justified. Clifton's mind was cataloging every detail, every word, every sound in the background. He could hear a television playing, the specific echo that indicated they were in his living room. He could hear Timothy crying softly somewhere nearby, alive, conscious, traumatized, but breathing. The adoption agency comes tomorrow, Sandy continued. He told them you abandon US, that you suffer from violent PTSD episode. They were very understanding about the urgency of removing Timothy from a dangerous environment. The cruelty was surgical in ETS precision. Sandy knew exactly which psychological button to push. Understanding his deepest fear about PTSD affecting his family, about being seen a danger to his own son, Jesse had been watching Clifton's face through the call. Years of combat partnership had taught him to read his Fran's expression like a technical manual. When Clifton's jaw tightened in that particular way, when his eyes went completely flat and emotionless, Jesse knew someone was about to die. Without a word, Jesse took the phone from Clifton's hand. This is Staff Sergeant Jesse Ree, United States Marine Corps, he said in his command voice. You've just threatened a federal employee and his dependent child. I'm ordering you to immediately cease all harmful action and wait for proper authority. Brandon's slaughter was loud enough for Clifton to hear. You and your boyfriend, soldier boy. Come home and try to stop me. The line went dead. Clifton sat in perfect stillness for exactly 30 seconds. HIS mind processing the situation with the same methodical approach used for long-range target elimination. Calculate distance. Account for wind. Adjust for target movement. Control breathing. Squeeze trigger. We are going home, he said finally, his voice carrying a flatness that made Jesse's spine crawl. Cliff, we can't just we are going home now, Jesse. Tonight. There was something in Clifton's tone that broke no argument. Jesse had served with him through 4 deployments. Had seen him stay calm while calling in airstrike on his own position. Had watch team make impossible shot under enemy fire. But ed never heard Clifton sound like this, like something fundamental had broken inside him and been rebuilt into something harder and infinitely more dangerous. What are you thinking, brother? Clifton looked at his friend with eyes that seemed to reflect starlight like a predator. I'm thinking that some people have made a very serious mistake, and I'm thinking that they're about to learn why you never threaten a sniper as family. The mission was about to change from foreign enemy to domestic target. And unlike the Taliban fighter they'd been hunting, Sandy and Brandon had no idea what was coming for them. Chapter 3. The Homecoming. Clifton had pulled string that shouldn't have existed. Called in favors from people who operated in the gray spaces between military protocol and necessity. Within 18 hours of the phone call, he and Jesse were on a military transport bound for the United States. Their departure classified a family emergency leave with expedited processing. During the flight, Clifton maintint his characteristic comme exterior while conducting reconnaissance on his target. Using secure military internet access, et began gathering intelligence with the Torugues of a special operation mission briefing. Brandon Gregg, age 32, worked a tattoo artist at ENC Dream in downtown Billings. Criminal record included minor drug possession, assault charge that were dropped, and a restraining order filed by an ex-girlfriend named Patricia Rollins, who claimed they threatened to mark her face when she tried to leave him. The restraining order had expired 2 years ago when Patricia moved out of state. Social media investigation revealed Brandon's narcissistic personality and his apparent belief that he was some kind of alpha male outlaw. His Instagram was filled with photos of his tattoo work, motorcycle, and several women in various states of undress. Recent posts showed him at Clifton's house, wearing Clifton's clothes, sleeping in Clifton's bed. Most damning were the photo of Timothy. The boy's small face bore a crude tattoo across his left cheek. Note the elaborate script Brandon had claimed, but a simple black mark that read bastard in block letters. The photo was captioned, teaching this little some respect. Jesse watched his friend's face as they scrolled through the evidence. Cliff, we need to involve authority. Child Protective Service, FBI, Someone Authority. Clifton's voice was barely above a whisper. Jesse, my son has been branded like cattle. My wife has been planning this for months, maybe years. Look at this timestamp. Some of these photos were taken while he was calling them for bedtime stories. The evidence painted a picture of systematic betrayal. Bank record showed Sandy had been withdrawing small amount of cash for months, building a hidden fund. Phone record revealed hundreds of calls to Brandon's number, starting just 2 weeks after Clifton's current deployment began. More disturbing were the text message threads Jesse discovered on Sandy's social media account. She had been documenting Clifton's military schedule, his emotional state during calls, even his plan for Timothy's birthday party. She shared intimate details about his PTSD episode and sleeping problem, painting him an unstable veteran who posed a danger to his family. She's been building a narrative, Clifton realized, his analytical mind cutting through the emotional devastation, creating documentation to support her story d'étamment infifater. Look at this medical appointment she made for Timothy. Therapy session for trauma related to Fater's military service. She's been manufacturing evidence for months. The plan began ETS descend into Billings Logan International Airport. Clifton closed his laptop and began changing into civilian clothes. Jesse noticed that his friend had packed specific item for this family emergency, not the usual comfort item or family photo that soldier brought home during crisis leave. Instead, Clifton had packed his personal surveillance equipment, lockpicking tools, and a collection of items that Jesse recognized from their advanced reconnaissance training. This wasn't a trip home to reconcile with family. This was a deployment against domestic target. What is the plan? Jesse asked quietly. Intelligence gathering first. You need to understand the full scope of the situation before taking action. Timothy's safety is priority 1. You need to know exactly where he is and what condition he is in. After that, Clifton's expression went completely flat. After that, Brandon and Sandy are going to learn about consequences. They collected their bag and walked through the airport like any other returning serviceman. But Jesse could feel the difference in his franc energy. Clifton moved with the predatory grass and displayed during combat operation, constantly scanning for threats, mentally cataloging exit route and potential weapon. As they approached the rental car counter, Clifton's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Yours on is with Child Protective Service. Sandy reported domestic violence concern. Hope you enjoyed the surprise, soldier boy. B. Clifton showed Jesse the message without comment. HIS Fran's face went red with rage, but Clifton's expression remained really calm. Dave isolated him, Clifton said matter of factly. Standard psychological warfare. Remove the target motivation for restraint. Eliminate emotional support system. Create desperation that lead to poor decision making. Except you don't make poor decision when you're desperate, Jesse observed. No, he make very carefully planned decision. And right now, I'm deciding that Brandon and Sandy have approximately 72 hours to live 3 lives before everything they've built comes crashing down around them. The rental car was a non-script sedan, chosen for ETS reliability rather than appearance. As they drove toward Billings, Clifton outlined this preliminary strategy. Phase 1, locate Timothy and assess his physical and emotional condition. Phase 2, comprehensive surveillance of both target to understand their routine, weakness, and relationship. Phase 3, systematic destruction of everything they value, starting with their sense of security and escalating until they understand exactly what they've done and if they involve law enforcement. Clifton's smile was colder than the Montana winter air. Jesse, I've spent 7 years building relationship with local law enforcement through my veteran support work. My wife is a known counselor who works with troubled veterans. And Brandon Gregg is a convicted criminal with a history of domestic violence. When this is over, the only question authority will have is why it took so long for justice to be served. The city lights of Billings appeared red of them like target indicator on a scope. Clifton was coming home, but he wasn't the same man who had left 6 months ago. That man had believed in trust, in the sanctity of family, in the power of love to overcome any obstacle. The man returning to Billings was something else entirely. A predator with military training, unlimited patience, and absolutely nothing left to lose. Chapter 4. Reconnaissance and Discovery. Clifton's first stop wasn't more the tattoo parlor. It was the Child Protective Service office. Years of working with veteran family had given him contact through the system, and he used them now with surgical precision. Lynette Todd, a social worker who had helped several of Clifton's fellow Marine navigate custody issue, agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near the CPS building. She looked uncomfortable as she sat across from him, clearly aware that this conversation was binding regulation. Clifton, I'm not supposed to discuss active case, but given your military service and the circumstance. She paused, studying his face. Timothy is physically safe. He is in a temporary foster home with the Buchanan family. They've used military children before. But I have to tell you, the allegations Sandy made were pretty serious. What exactly did she claim? Viol episode, threats against the family, alcohol abuse, weapons stored insecure in the home. She provided documentation, medical record, suggesting Timothy has been experiencing trauma symptoms related to your deployment. Clifton nodded calmly while his mind catalogued each fabricated allegation. Lynette, I've been deployed for 6 months. How exactly was it threatening my family from Afghanistan? She claims the threats were made during phone calls that you'd become increasingly unstable and paranoid. There are recorded calls. Clifton, your wife provided them evidence. Recorded calls. Sandy had been planning this for months, carefully engineering conversation to build her case. Clifton felt a cold admiration for her thoroughness, even a rage burned in his chest. When can he see my son? There's a hearing scheduled for next week. Until then, supervised visitation only and only if you agree to psychological evaluation. Lynette leaned forward, her voice dropping. Clifton, I've known you for 3 years. You've helped more veteran family than anyone else in this county. This doesn't feel right to me, but my heart yet by protocol. After leaving Lynette, Clifton and Jesse began systematic surveillance of their target. Using technique learned in urban warfare training, they established observation point around both Sandy's location and Brandon's tattoo shop. The house Clifton had booked for his family was now Brandon's base of operation. Through high-powered optic positioned in the neighboring park. They watched Brandon's daily routine. He worked out using Clifton's weight equipment, and generally lived like on the place. Sandy had moved in completely, her behavior suggesting this wasn't a recent development. She cooked breakfast for Brandon, answered the door when delivery driver arrived, and had clearly established herself as a lady of the house. Most gling, she wore Clifton's military unit t-shirt while doing hard work, half claiming ownership of his service record. At a dream tattoo parlor, Brandon's behavior revealed crucial information about his psychology. He bragged constantly to customers about taking another man's wife and child, describing Clifton as a broken soldier who couldn't handle a real woman. The tattoo shop security camera were poorly positioned, and Brandon kept irregular hours, making him predictable despite his attempt at appearing unpredictable. As a textbook narcissist, Jesse observed a day reviewed their surveillance note. ESS constant validation. Believe vs smarter than everyone else. View women à possession. Classic predator profile. Sandy is the more dangerous one, Clifton replied. Brandon is just muscle with an ego. She's the strategist. Look at how perfectly she's manipulated the legal system. How thoroughly she's documented her false narrative. This level of planning suggests she's done this before. Research into Sandy's background revealed information that Clifton's pre-marriage investigation had missed. Her college roommate reached through social media reluctantly shared that Sandy had been involved with a married professor during her senior year. When the professor refused to leave his wife, Sandy had filed false sexual harassment charge that destroyed his career. She has a pattern, Clifton realized. Find men in vulnerable position, veteran with PTSD, married. Men with something to lose, manipulate them into dependence, then destroy them when it serves her purpose. The breakthrough came on their third day of surveillance. Following Sandy to a medical appointment, they discovered she was pregnant. The timeline suggested Brandon was the father, but she was discussing options for claiming Clifton was responsible. She's planning to sue for child support. Jesse said after reviewing the audio they capture, while simultaneously claiming, "You're too dangerous to see the son you already have." Clifton stared at the photograph of his house where Brandon was currently grilling steak on the barbecue pit Clifton had built by hand. Timothy's bicycle lay in the yard, but there was no sign the boy had been there recently. Time for phase 2, Clifton said quietly. They want to play psychological game. Let's show them what a real psychological operation look like. That night, Clifton and Jesse began the first stage of what Clifton privately called Operation Homecoming. Using skill learned in special operation, they infiltrated the house while Brandon and Sandy were at a bar celebrating what Brandon described as getting rid of the soldier boy's brat. They didn't steal anything or leave obvious sign of entry. Instead, they made subtle changes designed to create paranoia and unease. Brandon's motorcycle keys were moved from the kitchen counter to the bathroom. Sandy's jewelry was rearranged in her jewelry box. The thermostat was adjusted by 2 degrees. Most importantly, Clifton retrieved items that belonged to him and Timothy, photographs, documents, and personal belongings that Sandy had no legal right to possess. In Timothy's room, Clifton found evidence of what his son had endured. Crude bandage from the tattoo, children's drawing depicting a scary man hurting him, and a hidden diary where Timothy had written about missing his daddy and being afraid of the mean man with tattoo. Reading his son's word written in careful 5-year-old handwriting, Clifton felt something fundamental shift inside him. The analytical, methodical soldier was still there, but now he was powered by something far more dangerous than military training. He was powered by a father's love twisted into an instrument of vengeance. Chapter 5. Psychological warfare. The campaign began with whisper. Clifton had spent years building relationships through Billings veteran and law enforcement community, and he activated those networks with surgical precision. He didn't spread lies. He simply shared documented facts in the right year at the right times. Brandon S. Parole Officer received anonymous tips about possible drug use. The Health Department received complaint about sanitation issue at ENC Dream. The IRS received information about unreported cash income from tattoo work. Each tip was backed by evidence that Clifton and Jesse had gathered during surveillance. More personally devastating was the psychological pressure they applied through subtle harassment. Brandon's motorcycle tire developed slow leaks requiring constant attention. HIS tattoo equipment malfunctioned at crucial moment, costing him high paying client. Food delivery et adente order arrived at his shop during busy period. Sandy found her carefully constructed narrative beginning to unravel. The medical record she falsified to support her claim about Timothy's trauma were scrutinized by CPS investigator who they received anonymous tips about inconsistency. Former client from her counseling practice came forward with question about her professionalism. Most damaging was the revelation of her pregnancy. When contacted by CPS investigator, Sandy's doctor confirmed she was approximately 10 weeks pregnant, timing that coincided with Clifton's deployment. This raised immediate question about her claim that Clifton had been making threatening calls from overseas. She's starting to crack, Jesse observed as they watched Sandy pace frantically in the house, talking on her phone. Look at her body language. Classic stress indicator. Brandon, meanwhile, was becoming increasingly paranoid. The constant small inconvenience and equipment failure had him suspicious of everyone around him. He installed new lock on his shop and home, changed his phone number, and started carrying a concealed weapon, a violation of his parole that Clifton documented, but hadn't yet reported. The psychological pressure intensified when Clifton began appearing in public place where Brandon and Sandy frequented. He never approached them or made threats. He simply existed in their space, reading a newspaper at the coffee shop where Sandy ate lunch, browsing magazine at the bookstore where Brandon bought his trade publication. HIS presence was carefully calculated to be both obvious and legally unassailable. When Sandy called police to report harassment, they found Clifton sitting quietly in public spaces with every right to be there. When Brandon confronted him outside the coffee shop, Clifton simply nodded politely and walked away, leaving Brandon looking unhinged to witness. "You're playing with her," Jesse said with grudging admiration. "I'm teaching them about consequence," Clifton corrected. "Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. They chose to destroy my family through psychological manipulation. Now they're learning what it feels like to be the target." The breakthrough came when Sandy made a critical error. Desperate to strengthen her case against Clifton, she attempted to forge additional evidence of his alleged threats. She created fake text message and doctored voice recording, but made the mistake of using technology that left digital fingerprint. Clifton's contact in the sheriff's department, Deputy Roden, had been quietly investigating Sandy's claim a favor to a fellow veteran. When the digital evidence analysis revealed forgery, the entire case against Clifton began to collapse. She's facing charge for filing false report and child endangerment. Roy explained during a discreet meeting at a truck stop outside town. The prosecutor is also looking into perjury and fraud. Your boy is going to be released to you by the end of the week. But Clifton wasn't satisfied with legal justice. That was too clean, too antiseptic for what Brandon and Sandy had done to Timothy. The tattoo on his son's face would be a permanent reminder of their cruelty, and Clifton intended to give them permanent reminder of their own. What about Brandon? He asked. That's where things get interesting. Turn out Monsieur Greg has been operating his tattoo parlor without proper licensing for the past year. Health Department violation, tax evasion, and now child abuse charge related to tattooing a minor without parental consent. He is looking at serious time. Legal consequences were a start, but Clifton had learned something important during his surveillance. Brandon's greatest fear wasn't a prison or financial ruin. HIS greatest fear was being seen a weak, a victim rather than a predator. That night, Clifton implemented the final phase of his psychological campaign. Using skill learned in special operation, he infiltrated Brandon's apartment while the man was at Sandy's house. But instead of subtle psychological pressure, this time he left a clear message. Brandon's motorcycle was disassembled with mechanical precision. Every bolt removed and placed in labeled container. HIS tattoo equipment was similarly dismantled. Expensive needles bent beyond repair. Ink supply mixed into an unusable mess. Most significant, all office mirror were replaced with photo of Timothy's tattooed face. The message was impossible to miss. You marked my son. Now you remarked, too. When Brandon discovered the destruction the next morning, his reaction was exactly what Clifton had predicted. Instead of calling police, which would have required admitting Someone had penetrated his security and made him look weak, Brandon flew into a rage that sent him straight to Sandy's house for confrontation. Clifton and Jesse watched from their observation point as Brandon kicked down the front door of what used to be Clifton's home, screaming accusations at Sandy about her, Soldier Boy X, coming after him. Neighbor called police. Domestic violence charge were filed and Brandon's parole was officially violated. 3 birds with 1 stone. Jesse mused. Brandon in custody. Sandy facing assault charge en accessory. And your house now officially a crime scene that they can't legally occupy. But Clifton wasn't done. Brandon and Sandy had chosen to use Timothy as a weapon against him. Now they were going to learn what happened when you declared war on a man who had spent years perfecting the art of systematic destruction. The real revenge was just beginning. Chapter 6. The art of destruction. With Brandon in county jail awaiting trial and Sandy isolated in a cheap motel, Clifton shifted from psychological warfare to systematic dismantling of everything they built. But his approach was methodical, legal, and absolutely devastating. First, he reclaimed his home through emergency court order. Sandy's illegal occupation and Brandon's destruction of property gave Clifton clear legal ground to regain possession immediately. Sheriff's deputy escorted Sandy from the premise while she screamed threats and accusations that only strengthened the case against her. Timothy was released to Clifton's custody the same day. The reunion was heartbreaking. HIS sont flinched when Clifton first approached. The cruel tattoo on his cheek, a stark reminder of what the boy had endured. But slowly, carefully, Clifton began rebuilding the trust that Sandy and Brandon had shattered. Daddy, the mean man said. You didn't want me anymore, Timothy whispered during their first night together. That was Ali, son. He will always want you. You're the most important thing in my life, and I'm never going to let anyone hurt you again. Clifton arranged for the best plastic surgeon in the region to evaluate Timothy's tattoo. While it could be removed through laser treatment, the process would take months and leave some scarring. Every session would remind Timothy of his trauma, and that knowledge fed the cold fury that drove Clifton's next move. Brandon's life was systematically destroyed from his jail cell. Clifton used his military intelligence contact to uncover a network of child exploitation that Brandon had been peripherally involved with, not a main player, but a Someone would provided tattoo service to mark underage trafficking victim. The evidence was forwarded to federal authority, ensuring Brandon would face charge that carry mandatory minimum sentence. The tattoo parlor was seized by the health department and IRS simultaneously. Brandon's business license was permanently revoked. His equipment destroyed a hazardous waste and his financial assets frozen pending investigation. When he was eventually released on bail, he would have literally nothing left. Sandy's destruction was more subtle, but equally complete. Clifton's investigation had revealed that she had been embezzling from the veteran support organization where she worked, using her position to steal from the same warriors she pretended to help. The evidence was presented to the board of directors, the state licensing board, and federal authority investigating fraud against veteran service. Her psychology license was suspended pending investigation. Her employee filed criminal charge. The IRS began auditing her personal finance. And most damaging of all, her parents learned the truth about what she had done to Timothy. Clifton met with Sandy's father, retired police officer Norman Carson, at a dinner in downtown Billings. The old man looked haggard, aged years in the few days since learning about his daughter's action. I don't understand how he raised Someone capable of this, Norman said, staring at photo of Timothy's tattooed face. How does a person do this to a child? Some people are just broken, Clifton replied. But I'm not here for revenge against your family, Norman. Amir because Sandy HAS writes at Timothy's biological mother and he need you to understand why that can never be allowed to happen. The conversation lasted 2 hours. By the end, Norman Carson was prepared to testify against his own doctor in any custody proceeding, supporting Clifton's petition for sole custody and termination of Sandy's parental rights. But the most devastating blow to Sandy came through her pregnancy. Genetic testing ordered by the court proved that Brandon was the father, destroying her narrative about timing and calling into question every aspect of her character testimony. More damaging still, medical record revealed she'd been using drugs during pregnancy, substance that would likely cause developmental problems for the unborn child. Social service began proceeding to remove the baby immediately upon birth. Sandy would face charge for child endangerment even before her child took its first breath. She's lost everything. Jesse observed a day watched Sandy through surveillance equipment at the motel where she'd been staying. Job, family, pregnancy, future. That is some comprehensive destruction. Brother, she hasn't lost everything yet, Clifton replied coldly. She still has her freedom, her health, and her ability to hurt other people. Those are problems that require a more direct solution. The legal system was handling Brandon and Sandy's obvious crime, but Clifton knew they would eventually be released, eventually have opportunities to hurt other family. Prison sentence were temporary. The damage they did done to Timothy was permanent. It was time for a more permanent solution. That night, Clifton received a call from Brandon's cell phone. The man had somehow gotten access to communication from Jay and was desperate to negotiate. Listen, soldier boy, this has gone far enough. I know you're the one who is my life. Let's make a deal. I'm listening, Clifton said neutrally. Call off your dogs. Stop the federal investigation. Get the charge dropped and ELL disappear. You'll never see me again. And Sandy, that is on her own. She used me as much I used her. But I got information you want about other kids she's hurt, other family she's destroyed, veteran she's targeted through her job. Give me a clean slate and ELL under two you want aplate. Clifton smiled in the darkness of his reclaimed home. Timothy sleeping safely in the next room. Brandon was offering to betray Sandy, proving that neither of them possessed even the most basic human loyalty. They deserved each other and they deserved what was coming next. Brandon, I appreciate the offer, but you made one crucial mistake. What is that? You assumed he wanted you to disappear. I don't want you to disappear, Brandon. I want you to suffer publicly, permanently, and completely. And tomorrow, that process is going to accelerate beyond anything you can imagine. The line went dead. In his jail cell, Brandon suddenly understood that he'd miscalculated badly. The psychological pressure hadn't been designed to drive him away. It had been designed to position him exactly where Clifton wanted him, and Clifton wanted him exactly where the real revenge could begin. Chapter 7. The Trap Springs. Brandon's release on bail was orchestrated with military precision. Clifton had used his connection to ensure that Brandon would be released on a Friday evening, giving him a full weekend before his next court appearance. It was a classic tactical maneuver. Give the enemy enough rope and time to hang himself. Brandon emerged from county jail convinced that his phone call with Clifton had bought him some kind of immunity. He was wrong. The psychological pressure had been preparation. Now came the execution phase. HE's first stop was the cheap motel where Sandy was staying. Surveillance camera that Clifton had legally installed around his reclaimed property captured their reunion. A screaming argument in the parking lot where Brandon blamed Sandy for his arrest. And Sandy accused Brandon of abandoning her when she needed him most. They deserve each other. Jesse commented as they watched the footage. Question is, what is the hangam here? Clifton didn't answer immediately. He was studying the screen with the same intensity and eons applied to tracking enemy movement pattern. Brandon and Sandy were predictable, narcissistic, and desperate. That combination made them vulnerable to manipulation. Tonight they're going to make a choice, Clifton finally said, and that choice is going to determine how this ends. The choice came in the form of a carefully planned opportunity. Through intermediary, word reached Brandon that a high-paying tattoo client wanted to meet that evening. Someone looking for discreet work who was willing to pay cash for special service. The meeting was set for an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, a location that Brandon's criminal contact had recommended a safe for questionable transaction. What Brandon didn't know was that Clifton had spent the afternoon setting up the warehouse like a kill zone. Not to kill, that would be too quick, too merciful for what they did on to Timothy, but to trap them in a situation where their true nature would be revealed and documented. Sandy accompanied Brandon to the meeting, driven by greed and desperation. Their financial situation was dire with legal bill mounting and no legitimate income source available. The promise of easy money was irresistible to people who they built their lives on taking shortcut. They entered the warehouse at exactly 9h47 du soir guided by strategically placed lights tower a central area where chair and tattoo equipment had been arranged. Hidden camera captured their movement from multiple angles, while directional microphone ensured every word would be recorded. Brandon set up his portable tattoo equipment while Sandy kept watch. Both of them nervously excited about the money they believed was coming. They waited 30 minutes before realizing they'd been set up. This is fucked, Brandon said, starting to pack his equipment. Someone's playing game. That's when the lights went out, plunging the warehouse into darkness broken only by emergency lighting that created dramatic shadow. A voice echoed through hidden speaker. Clifton's voice, but electronically modified to sound otherworldly. Brandon Gregg, Sandy Maz, you are here to face judgment for crime against innocence. Both of them spun around trying to locate the source of the voice. Brandon pulled out a knife and concealed in his tattoo kit while Sandy pressed herself against his back in terror. You marked a child, the voice continued. You stole a father's love. You destroyed a family for your own gratification. Tonight, you will understand the meaning of consequence. Suddenly, the warehouse was flooded with blinding light. When their eyes adjusted, Brandon and Sandy found themselves surrounded by a dozen men in military gear, face hidden behind tactical masks. At the center of the group stood Clifton, no longer hiding his identity. But these weren't a soldier or law enforcement. They were veterans from Clifton's support network. Marine, Army Rangers, and Navy SEAL who they volunteered for this operation after learning what Brandon and Sandy had done to a fellow warrior's family. What the is this? Brandon demanded, trying to project confidence while his voice cracked with fear. This is accountability, replied Jesse, removing his mask. You were a Marine's kid. You dishonored a military family. You made this personal for all of us. Sandy tried to run, but found her path blocked by two massive former Army Rangers. Her courage evaporated instantly, replaced by the whimpering terror of someone who they finally made people immune to her manipulation. You can't do this, she screamed. This is kidnapping, assault. We have rights. You're absolutely right, Clifton said calmly. You do have rights. The same rights you gave my 5-year-old son when you let your boyfriend tattoo his face. The warehouse had been configured as a courtroom offshore with camera, recording equipment, and a table full of evidence documenting Brandon and Sandy's crime. This wasn't about physical revenge. It was about public humiliation and permanent consequence. Here's how this works, Clifton explained. You're going to confess on camera. Everything you did, why you did it, and exactly how you planned it. You're going to admit that my son was an innocent victim of your cruelty, and you're going to explain to the world what kind of people prey on military family. And if we refuse, Brandon asked, to his bravado was completely gone, then we release you, Clifton said simply. Right here, right now. No physical harm, no furtive interaction. But the video evidence we've already recorded of your criminal conspiracy, your weapon violation, and your attempted extortion will be forwarded to every law enforcement agency in the state. Jesse held up a table showing surveillance footage of Brandon's drug dealing operation, something they discovered and documented during their investigation. Plus, we found your side business, Brandon, selling meth to high school kids. Federal offense, automatic minimum of 10 years. But hey, you have the right to remain silent. The trap was perfect. Confess publicly and face social annihilation or remain silent and face decade in federal prison. Either way, their ability to hurt other family would be permanently ended. Sandy broke first, as Clifton had predicted. Narcissists always broke when confronted with consequences they couldn't manipulate or escape. It wasn't my idea, she screamed, pointing at Brandon. He made me do it. He said we could get money from child support that no one would believe a crazy soldier. Brandon turned on her instantly. Julian, you're the one who planned this whole thing. You targeted him from the beginning. And there it was. The confession Clifton needed recorded in high definition with multiple witnesses. Two cowards turning on each other the moment they faced real consequences, proving they were exactly the worthless predator they known them to be. The camera captured everything as Brandon and Sandy destroyed each other with accusation and revelation. By the time they were finished, they confessed to fraud, child abuse, conspiracy, and a dozen other crimes that would ensure neither of them would hurt another family for years to come. Thank you for your cooperation, Clifton said as his veteran friends began packing equipment. Your confession will be forwarded to appropriate authority along with all supporting evidence. You're free to go. That is it, Sandy asked, confused by the anticlimactic ending. That is it, Clifton confirmed. Justice isn't about revenge, Sandy. It's about making sure the right people face the right consequences for their choice. You've both made your choice very clear tonight. As a veteran filed out of the warehouse, leaving Brandon and Sandy alone in the darkness, Clifton felt a weight lift from his shoulder. Not the weight of anger that would take time to fade, but the weight of uncertainty of not knowing how to protect his son from people like them. Now everyone would know exactly what Brandon and Sandy were. Their confession would be public record, their face known to every parent in the state. They would face legal consequences for their crime and social consequences for their cruelty. Most importantly, Timothy would grow up knowing that his father had fought for him, that justice existed, and that good people would always stand against those who prey on the innocent. The real revenge wasn't destruction. It was ensuring that Brandon and Sandy would live the rest of their lives as a pathetic, exposed coward they'd always been inside. Chapter 8. Exposure and consequences. The confession went viral within hours of being posted on social media platforms and sent to news outlets. Clifton had edited the footage professionally, focusing on the most damaging admission while protecting the identity of his veteran ally. The video showed two adults admitting to child abuse, fraud, and conspiracy against a military family. Their faces clearly visible as they turned on each other with vicious accusations. Local news picked up the story first, then regional outlets, and finally national media. The image of Timothy's tattooed face became a symbol of child abuse, while Brandon and Sandy became symbol of the worst aspect of human nature. Social media exploded with outrage. Veteran organizations called for maximum prosecution, and child advocacy group used the case to highlight the vulnerability of military family. Brandon was arrested at the warehouse parking lot by federal agents who had been monitoring the situation. HIS confession to methamphetamine had triggered immediate federal charge while his admission to tattooing a minor without consent brought additional state charge. HIS bail was revoked and he was transferred to federal custody pending trial. Sandy faced a different kind of destruction. Her pregnancy meant she couldn't be immediately jailed, but her life became unlivable in other way. Her parents disowned her publicly. Her former colleague released statement distancing themselves from her action, and Child Protective Service began proceeding to terminate her parental rights to both Timothy and her unborn child. More devastating was the social media response. Someone created a website cataloging Sandy's history of targeting vulnerable men, including testimonial from other veterans she had manipulated through her counseling position. The pattern was clear. She'd been using her professional access to identify and exploit men dealing with PTSD, financial problem, or relationship issue. She's a serial predator, Jesse observed as they read through the victim testimonial. How many families did she destroy before targeting you? 7 confirmed cases, Clifton replied, reviewing the evidence that concerned veterans had provided. Maybe more. She had a system. Identify vulnerable veterans, manipulate their trust, drain their resource, then destroy them when they were no longer useful. The most damaging testimony came from Patricia Rollins, Brandon's ex-girlfriend, who defiled the restraining order years earlier. She came forward with evidence that Brandon and Sandy had been working together longer than anyone realized, targeting military family in multiple states. They're a team, Patricia explained in her recorded statement. Brandon found the family, usually through his tattoo work or bar connection. Sandy j'ai access through her counseling position or veteran support group. They study the target, build trust, then systematically destroy them. Federal investigator began examining similar cases in other states, finding a pattern of destroyed military marriage, questionable custody battles, and unexplained financial loss among veterans who they interacted with Sandy's counseling service. The scope of their crime transformed a local child abuse case into a federal investigation of systematic fraud against military family. The FBI established a task force specifically to investigate what media had dubbed the veteran hunter case. For Clifton, the public revelation brought an unexpected sense of closure. Et they've been wondering for months how Sandy could have changed so completely from the woman they married. Now. Et understood that she'd never changed. Et they simply been another target in a long-running criminal enterprise. Timothy was responding well to therapy and the knowledge that his father had fought for him. The boy's physical scar would heal with time and treatment, but the psychological healing was already beginning. He understood that bad people had hurt him, but that his daddy had made sure they couldn't hurt other children. Will the mean people go to jail forever? Timothy asked during one of their evening talk. For a very long time, Clifton assured him. Long enough that they'll be too old to hurt anyone when they get out. The custody hearing was a formality. Sandy's parental rights were terminated unanimously with the judge noting that her action constituted such severe child endangerment that no reunification service would be offered. Brandon was designated a dangerous offender, permanently prohibited from contact with minor. More significant, both faced civil lawsuit from the other veteran family they victimized. Clifton had helped organize a class action suit that would ensure any assets Brandon and Sandy possessed would go to compensating their victim. The financial destruction was a complete as a legal consequence. Brandon's assets were seized under federal forfeit laws related to his drug dealing. Sandy's professional insurance policy were cancelled, her pension forfeited, and her personal assets frozen pending the civil litigation. They'll spend the rest of their lives paying for what they did, explained Margarita Lawrence, the attorney representing the veteran family. Even if they ever get out of prison, they'll be financially destroyed and unemployable. But the most satisfying consequence was the social ostracism. Both Brandon and Sandy had been narcissists who craved attention and admiration. Now they were notorious, their fast known nationwide a symbol of cruelty and betrayal. They would never again be able to manipulate victims through charm or false sympathy. Letters poured in from around the country. Veteran thanking Clifton for exposing the predator, parents expressing support for Timothy and law enforcement agencies sharing information about similar cases. The story had struck a nerve, highlighting the unique vulnerability of military family and the importance of protecting those who served. 3 months after the warehouse confrontation, Brandon was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison for methamphetamine distribution, child abuse, and conspiracy charge. Sandy received 15 years for fraud, child endangerment, and her role in the conspiracy. Both would be middle-aged when released, their criminal record ensuring they never again have access to the position of trust they exploited. The case resulted in policy change at veteran organization nationwide. Background check became more thorough, oversight of counseling service increased, and new protocols were established to identify potential predators within support system. You turned a personal tragedy into protection for other family. Jesse observed a day watched news coverage of the sentencing. That is something to be proud of. Clifton nodded, but satisfaction came from a simple source. Timothy was safe, the predators were neutralized, and justice had been served through legal means. Aider provant that patience, planning, and proper use of evidence could achieve better result than violence. The warrior had won without compromising his honor or his future with his son. Chapter 9. New beginning. 1 year later, Clifton stood in the backyard of his Montana home, watching Timothy practice shooting a bow and arrow at target they set up together. The boy's face bore only faint scarring where the tattoo had been. Laser removal had been more successful than doctor initially predicted. More importantly, Timothy's smile had returned along with his trust in the world around him. Hit the bullseye, Daddy. Timothy shouted, pointing at his arrow buried in the center ring. Outstanding shot, son. Remember what he talked to you about breeding and follow through. The archery lessons were part of Timothy's selling process. Dr. Julia Reed, the child psychologist who had been working with Timothy, had suggested activity that would help him regain a sense of control and confidence. The measured discipline of archery, combined with his father's patient instruction, was rebuilding the boy's faith in his own ability. Clifton had transitioned out of active military service, taking a position with the FBI's veteran crime task force that had grown out of the investigation into Sandy and Brandon's activity. HIS military experience and personal understanding of predatory tactics made him uniquely qualified to identify and stop criminals who targeted military family. The work was satisfying in ways military service had never been. Instead of hunting foreign enemy, he was protecting the people who they served alongside him. Each case helped solve meant another family spared the trauma his son had endured. Jesse had also transitioned to civilian life, opening a security consulting business that specialized in protecting veteran organizations from infiltration by predator. The two friends worked together regularly. Their partnership evolved from military operation to civilian protection effort. The warehouse confrontation had been investigated by multiple agencies, but no charges were filed against Clifton or Isali. The tactic used were deemed legal form of citizens arrest and evidence gathering, particularly given the confession obtained and the voluntary nature of Brandon and Sandy's statement. More importantly, the investigation revealed that Clifton's methods had prevented additional crime. Evidence found in Brandon's possession indicated he and Sandy had been planning to target at least 3 more military families using the same pattern of manipulation and abuse they perfected over years of criminal activity. Brandon's incarceration had been especially difficult. Federal prison was not keen to child abuse, and this arrogance had made him additional enemy among Amat. Report from inside suggested he spent most of his time in protective custody. The tough guy persona completely stripped away by the reality of prison life. Sandy had fared little better. Her pregnancy had ended in miscarriage, likely caused by stress and her previous drug use. She had given birth in prison to a stillborn child. The genetic testing confirming Brandon as a father. The loss had broken her psychologically, leaving her a shadow of the manipulative predator she had once been. They got what they deserved, Timothy said unexpectedly, startling Clifton from his thoughts. What do you mean, son? The mean people who hurt me. They enjoy where they can't hurt other kids. That is good, right? Clifton knelt down to his son's level, studying the boy's face. Timothy had gained a mature understanding of justice that most children his age never developed. He understood that some people chose to be evil, but that good people would always fight to stop them. Yes, son. That is very good. They can't hurt anyone anymore. And if other mean people try to hurt our family, you'll stop them, too. Always, Clifton promised. That is what father do. We protect our family. The healing process had taken time, but both father and son had emerged stronger. Timothy was excelling in school, making friends, and showing none of the behavioral problem doctor had initially feared. HIS resilience was a testament to the strength Clifton had always seen in him. Clifton's own healing had been more complex. The betrayal by Sandy had shattered his faith in romantic relationship, but it had also clarified his priority. Timothy was everything that mattered. Career success, financial security, and personal happiness were all secondary to being the father his son deserved. Daddy, can we invite Uncle Jesse for dinner tonight? Timothy asked using the honorary title they given to Clifton's closest friend. Of course. Any special reason? I want to show him my archery trophy and tell him about the mean kids at school who stopped being mean when he told them my daddy catch bad guys for work. Clifton smiled at that. Timothy had learned that strength didn't come from anger or violence, but from justice and the support of good people. The boy understood that his father's profession wasn't about revenge. It was about protection. As they walked back towards the house, Clifton reflected on the lesson learned through their ordeal. Evil people existed and they would always target the vulnerable, but good people working together with patience and determination could stop them. Justice might be slow, but it was inevitable for those who understood how to pursue it properly. The phone rang as they entered the house. Clifton's work line, indicating a new case. Someone else's family was under threat. Someone else's children were in danger. It was time to get back to work. Agent Mays, et answered professionally. Sir, we have a situation in Colorado. Military family, veteran with PTSD, suspicious custody battle. Initial investigation suggests the pattern we've been tracking. Another predator, another family in need of protection. Clifton felt the familiar surge of focused energy that came with a new mission. I'll be there tomorrow, he said. Send me the case file and surveillance requirement. Eyeing up, Timothy looked at him with understanding beyond his years. You have to go help another family. Yes, son. But this time it's different. How? Clifton smiled, feeling the satisfaction that came from a life lived with purpose. This time we know what we're looking for, and we know how to stop them before they can hurt anyone. Timothy nodded seriously, then broke into the bright smile that made everything worthwhile. Go catch the bad guys, Daddy. I'll practice my archery until you get back. Watching his son walk confidently back to the archery range, Clifton felt a deep sense of completion. They survived the worst that evil people could inflict and they emerged stronger. Timothy would grow up understanding that justice existed, that good people fought for it, and that some betrayal could never be forgiven, but that life continued and new family could be built on stronger foundation. The warrior's mission had evolved from destruction to protection, from vengeance to justice. And in that evolution, both father and son had found their true strength. The phone was already ringing again. Another family in need, another mission waiting. Clifton Mays was ready to answer the call. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen and I will see you.